Lights, camera, action!
Greetings and salutations, boys and girls. Max here for Mellow Media, and welcome to part 2 of making your drums slap. So last week we covered a lot of foundational information in getting your drums in phase and starting the edits on your drums to get them to the point where they are essentially banging. Now, if you missed that episode, I do advise that you check it out because it is a lot of context you will be missing if you just start from this point. So please do go and check it out. So this week we have a banging episode. We are covering the alchemy of a kick, the alchemy of a snare, and the alchemy of toms. Basically the fundamentals, literally and quite figuratively. I mean, Bruce, I don't want to say that I'm a genius or anything, but the things I put together and the puns I have are just too immaculate.
No.
So anyway, we'll be covering the fundamentals of these drums quite literally and figuratively. So grab your snacks, grab your popcorn, get ready to learn, and I will see you on the other side. All right, now that the drums are in phase and the toms are edited, it is time to layer the kit. Now, layering the kit with samples has become a standard practice in modern times. Before you even think about a sample or select a sample, I have learned it's best to have a chat with your client. Find out what their sonic goals are. Some clients would like the drums replaced and they would like to go for a specific sound. That is quite normal in this modern day drum landscape. Some clients would like the drums layered for those that know about drum techniques, and some simply don't care. As long as it sounds good coming out their speakers is whatever works. In this case, the client basically said to me, I trust you. And I can't tell you how far that goes. It's second to only fire emojis. So when the client said, I trust you, do what you think is best, I employed my standard technique, which is to work with the drum kit. I try to take what's there and augment it, layer in samples that work with the kit, rather than basically replace the kit and make it sound unnatural. Now, one of the biggest mistakes you can make is to think that you can just layer in any sample with your drum kit. Nope, there's levels to the stuff.
I thought we were done with the dad jokes.
What you talking about, man? I'm just getting started.
No, please stop.
Like I said, there's levels to this stuff, quite literally and figuratively. Let's start with the alchemy of a kick. When setting up your kick for awesomeness and attractiveness, for which there is a charge, you have 3 areas that you want to consider: 60 Hz, 160 Hz, 600 Hz, and 6,000 Hz. So that is your lows, your low mids, and your high mids. It's not really 6,000 Hz. It just sounded more poetic than 2,000 or 3,000 Hz, which is really like where, you want to focus on. But
While in fact get in the way of symmetry.
exactly. 60 Hz punches you in the chest. It's more a feeling and less of a hearing. Yeah, it's legit. It's what gives the drums its weight and its size. 160 is that knock on the door that makes your kick punchy. It's like a knock knock, who's there? A punchy kick. 160 is what?
You're letting the ancestors down.
You obviously didn't watch Naked Gun and Hot Shots with my dad.
What does this have to do with drums?
You interrupted me, Bruce.
Just go on.
Like I said, 160 is that knock on the door that you get, that punchy feeling from your kick. You don't like that, Bruce?
Mm-mm.
Knock on your door, D-A-W, door?
No.
You don't? No?
Nah.
You don't think that's great?
Mm-mm.
It's fine. Let's move on. Next, we have 600, or the low mid area. Now, I generally don't boost in this area as it can make the kick sound boxy. So generally what you want to do is cut in this area for good reason. It makes space for the vocals, the keys, and the bass. Lastly, we have the 6,000 Hz area, or the high mids of the kick. This is the part that you can hear. So this is more a hearing and less of a feeling. This area is what cuts through on small speakers, and in a dense mix when your ear wants to find the kick, this is the part that will stick and poke out. So as you will no doubt see that a kick can be 20-20, that means it goes from about 20 hertz or even lower up to about 20 kilohertz at times. I find that with gospel kicks, they tend to go up to about 12 or 16,000 odd hertz. When you emphasize this area, you give your kick a sense of presence and stability in the mix. Like I said, it's what the ear finds in a dense mix or in a small speaker. And when your ears hear that 6,000 hertz, it's kind of like your brain hears 60 hertz. But nope, it's not. It's just magic and science. So when you're putting your kick together, those are the four areas that you want to consider. So there are a number of drum trigger apps on the market. The one I use is the Slate Trigger. It was recommended to me because of its accuracy, and I find that it is very accurate as long as the samples are well presented. Now, you do get some people who are lazy and they leave that little bit in front of the sample and a little bit after. I mean, brother, what is that, brother? Drum triggers have essentially become a must-have when it comes to live drums. It is part of what Brian Regan calls the Essentials Kit. As we proceed, you will see that there are other plugins in this Essentials Kit as well. These are plugins that I don't leave with home. With home without. With home out. I don't leave with home out. These are plugins that I don't leave home without, and Slate Trigger is one of them. So my secret sauce that I have for that 60 hertz feeling that you want from the kick is that I layer in a sine wave. So what I did a while back is that I searched essentially how to make drums using synths like Serum and Phase Plant. I went on the YouTubes, I searched for this, and I found a lot of great tutorials. And what I ended up doing was to mute everything else except for the sine wave. I then bounced the high-res sine wave and then put it in my Slate Trigger library. Now I use it on just about every kick and drum kit that you hear from me. I put that on everything like Everybody and Auto-Tune. So depending on the kit, I will also layer in a sample called the Dan kit. So as you can see it here, let's just play it for you. Let me just put on my headphones to make sure it's actually coming through. There we go. So I lay in the Dan kick, and let's just hear that Serum sine wave. Hopefully you have some kind of speakers, headphones that you're listening on, and this is not on your phone. If it is on your phone, maybe attach a sub to your phone so that you can hear that. So that is essentially what I use for the 60 hertz sine wave. And for that 160, I got the Dan kick. And this is pretty much a standard kick on all of my kits, unless the kick is well recorded and it gives me that. Dan kick is as standard as paint on walls, white on rice, taxes, if you pay those. So when these two kicks powers combine, essentially they give me that 60 hertz feeling and less hearing, and that 160 hertz knock on the DAW. And what I get is this really full and punchy kick that makes for awesomeness and attractiveness, for which there is a charge. And full disclosure, I spoke about layering stuff earlier and working with the kit. And sometimes, I mean, these just sound better than the kick on the kit, so they tend to dominate. Yeah, I'm just being honest. So together with the kicks that I get from the kit, and in concert with the Dan kick, I generally get also that high mid beta type of sound that really cuts through the mix, that sound that I was talking about. Now that we have covered basically how I construct and compose a kick, the main reason I do this is, or at least what I've come to understand about my process is, I'm trying to get my kick ready out the box. I don't want to do a lot of EQing and processing to try and get it there. I am setting it up for success. I'm already giving it that 60 hertz and that weight and that sub that I want to boost in. Part of the composition is I'm baking that in. That 160 that I anticipate that I'm going to need to boost in, I'm already putting that there with the kick sample. That high mids, that beta sound that needs to cut through the mix as well. I'm making sure that when I construct and compose my kick and put it together, that it is amazing out the box. That way I do minimal processing. Now for the alchemy of a snare. So when layering a snare, unless you want to replace it, you want to think of it in terms of when you add samples, you want to add stuff that's similar enough yet different enough to add meaningfully towards the sound. You want to reinforce the snare and augment it and not replace it. This rarely happens. It's more of a 1 in a million type of case, but I had one shots for this drum kit. There was a studio session that a friend of mine had with this drummer, shout outs, and he recorded some super sweet one shots for us. One shots of the kick, one shots of the snare. And this essentially allowed me to layer in the snare with the snare of the drummer, giving me a fuller snare sound, his snare sound, but fuller. So that is one of the samples that I used, and you can see it over there. Like with the kick, there are several points of interest to the snare. There's the fundamental, there's the low mids, the high mids, and the highs. Now it's not as nicely packaged as I did with the snare. I'm sorry, I tried to think of something, but there was nothing. But this still makes sense when we use the kick as the predicate. So firstly, the fundamental of the snare. The fundamental is the highest peak and most intense part of the snare. This is the frequency that the snare is vibrating at. In this case, the snare is vibrating at 237 cycles per second. The rest of the frequencies that you see from the low mids, and highs is essentially the overtones and harmonics of the snare. More on that later. Now, the fundamental is important because it tells us so much about the snare. Essentially, how to tune our samples. It tells us how we can compress the snare. It tells us where and what to EQ, and it also tells us the pitch of the snare. The higher the fundamental, the higher in pitch the snare will be. The lower the fundamental, the lower in pitch the snare will be. This concept of the fundamental can be applied broadly to everything. The kick has a fundamental, it's just a bit more difficult to detect, and that's why I didn't get into it. The toms have a fundamental, your vocal has a fundamental as well. This concept of a fundamental can be applied broadly. So like I said, the fundamental lets us know the pitch of the snare. And that is a clue to the type of samples you should be considering for your snare. So first thing you can do with your ears is hear that something is similar sounding in pitch. Next thing you can do once you've established the pitch of your sample is tune it to the fundamental of the snare. And there's some basic rules to observe here. For example, you don't want to take a deep snare and tune it up 100 hertz. It's going to sound strange. Similarly, so you don't want to take a higher pitch snare of 230 hertz and tune it down 100 hertz. That is also going to sound pretty weird. Unless that's what you're going for, you want to find snares that are in the range of the snare that you are layering. This makes for more beautiful sounding snares. A good place to start is with a snare that is in the range of the snare that you are layering. So if the snare has a fundamental of 150, find snares that are in that range. It makes tuning faster and easier. And if the snare is at the main snare of the song at 230 hertz, it will also be easier to tune these snares to that fundamental. So if we look at the snares that I'm layering in here, I have the Mapex snare, which is what the drummer is using. And if I were to bypass this, you would see that the snare, let's bring this up, has a fundamental of 237. Right, round about 237, 240. Because I mixed the song before, yes, I know. And because I also filmed this before and my footage went missing, who do I blame? I'm not a boomer, nor am I a zoomer. I'm a millennial. We are the tech guys. Who do I blame? Anyway, The fundamental of the snare is 237. So when I layered in the sample, I had to make sure that the fundamental is the same. There we go. All right, and if we go here to the slate trigger, you will see that I just had to tune it up slightly as the skin or the tuning on his snare changed by 5 cents. So the next sample I have is one of the samples. I'm not sure where I got this from, but it is a similar sounding snare. Let's hear it. So if we had to bypass it, wow. The reason they sound so dramatically different is because this one is obviously being processed a little bit. But when you do it with this one, and you do it with that one, also a bit of EQ, but you get the point. So as you have seen, I use the frequency analyzer in Cubase to see what the fundamental of my snare is. This is quite a standard practice. So if we had to go to the lowest snare, let's go here. Then I check what the fundamental is for that snare. Let's go, let's play. Around about 150. And the frequency analyzer helps me see where I need to tune my samples to. So that's actually the sample playing, which is also the deep snare from the same kit. It's a nice happy coincidence. So if I had to look at the raw snare, it's around about 150-ish. Yeah, around about 150-ish, and the sample around about 150-ish. So we are getting, what we are doing is essentially reinforcing the drum quite nicely. And there is a science behind this that I want to explain in a separate video. And the reason I'm going to do that, because then I can create more content. You guys can subscribe because you know more content is coming, and we are all happy. I get clicks and views. You guys get nice videos. It's time to cover the Alchemy of Toms. Now, we covered quite a bit of ground with snares, and I don't want to labor the point, but the same concepts apply. Now, instead of just one drum, it applies across 3 or 4 toms. Now, a kit typically has 3 toms: high tom, medium tom, tom 2 max, a high tom, tom 2, and a floor tom. I find that a lot of modern productions have a 4 tom minimum. It's seldom that you see 3 toms anymore, and South African drummers seem to love 5 toms, or maybe it's just Snegiwe and Sabu. So Model C of me, Snegiwe. Forgive me, bro. Like the snare, each tom will have a fundamental. The higher the fundamental, the higher in pitch the tom. So the high tom will have the highest fundamental, and the floor tom will have the lowest fundamental. Now, the floor tom will usually have a fundamental around the same as a kick, so around 60 to 80 hertz, maybe slightly higher. And you'll find that the rack toms will usually go from about 250, or the fundamental of a snare, all the way down to even 100 hertz. And as you descend down the drum kit, what you will get is lower and lower fundamentals. And so the same concept applies to toms. There will be a fundamental, low mids, high mids, and toms tend to not have that much highs. The highs that toms do have generally come from cymbal bleed. So a nice life hack that I thought of, Genius Max by himself thought of this. I have not seen this on the YouTube, so I'm gonna credit myself with it, is the idea of proxy toms. So what are proxy toms? Let's just zoom in for a little to these toms. So let's say I have a tom here that is burdened by cymbal noise, like, okay, let's just do this. Fixed it. So let's say we have a tom that is burdened by cymbal noise, or on that strike, the drummer just wasn't feeling his best. And let's, for argument's sake, say it's this tom over here that looks so emaciated, and you can see the cymbal bleed over there. Let's say there's cymbal bleed that I want to get rid of. So instead of having to live with that cymbal bleed, I can simply just copy this tom over here. And what I can do is press Control and C and copy this tom. So every time I have a tom that is not feeling as good, I can just replace it with this Proxy Tom. Although that tom is great, so it's all good. This tom over here, for example, this emaciated tom that we see, let's say we want to replace it with a stronger tom. And I'm just seeing like a stronger tom. Let's say we want to replace it with a stronger tom, and let's pretend we have this guy. Wrong place, and then we paste it over there. So the thing you want to make sure of is that you are perfectly aligning the toms that you are replacing. And it's for the reason we discussed earlier. It is because these mics are listening to each other. The snare is listening to the toms. The overheads is listening to everything. The hi-hat mic is listening to the toms as well. So if you have something that's out of phase with the rest of the kit, you will have temporary phase interference. And the wonderful thing about this concept that I came up with, and y'all should credit me when y'all use it, tag me, get at me, whatever. The wonderful thing about this concept is that it can apply broadly. At times I have to use slicing. At times I have to use proxy kicks. I find that there may be some kicks that go out of phase or are not well struck or even missing, and the producer asks me to put a kick in a certain place, or I take it upon myself to replace a kick. This also applies to snares. Sometimes the drummer hits the mic for some reason, and I have to replace that snare transient with a proxy snare. And that's when you get to really choose a great transient that will help the kit nicely. Now, some of you might say that y'all replace the toms and you don't need all of this proxy stuff. And I say to you, yes, you do. And the reason why is, even though you're going to replace the toms and probably not use the kit, which is the modern way of doing drums, when you have a proxy tom that is nice, clean, and clear, you don't have the drum trigger that we have over here. Oh, it's on the other screen. Let me drag it yet. We don't have the drum trigger that we have over here, having to squint through all that cymbal noise to see that itty bitty little tom. Nope. You're giving it a nice, healthy tom to aim at. Because this drum, and let's just demonstrate. Let's go to a tom. It has a threshold. And as you can see, there's a threshold. When the tom falls beneath, below and beneath together make beneath. When the tom transient falls beneath the
What's going on?
Sort your mouth out, Max. I know, right? Okay, let's go again, Bruce.
Let's go.
When the tom transient falls beneath the threshold, nailed it.
First try.
It does not get triggered, and so the drummer is rolling his heart out, but nothing's coming through the speakers. So proxy toms and proxy sort of drums in general are a great way not only to trigger clean triggers, but to have a slamming kit that is consistent all the way through. So once you have everything triggered and layered, you have your samples and everything is tuned and all nice, we move on to the last step. Actually, still so much more to cover. Oh, man, this is a long tutorial. Oh, and it doesn't help that I'm slicing all the time. iPhone Pro Mix. Before I cause like a open chat scandal, let me move on. Alright, boys and girls, that's where we're going to leave it for this episode. We hope you had a good time. I know, Bruce, you had to suffer through my dad jokes.
Hey, yeah, goodness.
I mean, like, I can't help it, bro.
Why?
I mean, dad jokes, they're my love language. Like if you want to communicate to me and say like, here's a nice hug, or here's I love you, Max, just communicated dad jokes. It's my love language. You know, if my wife were to do two things, just two things, tell dad jokes, play FIFA, we would have, I mean, we happily married. Let's just put it there, but it will be even more better, you know. It'll be even more better. That's all I'm saying.
No.
Anyway, let me do let me finish this outro before it gets too long.
Please.
Anyway, boys and girls, I hope you had fun with us this week. Thank you for watching part 2 of Making Your Drums Slap, and subsequently there will be a part 3. And with part 3 comes, you know, this is a special sauce that I have in store for you guys. We are covering that deep phase. I'm gonna show you how to really get those drums knocking. You don't want to miss this one. If you enjoyed this episode, you know what to do. Don't be shy to hit the buttons on whichever platform you are seeing us. We really appreciate all the love and support y'all are giving us. And if you are looking forward to the next episode because it sounds like a good time to you, don't be shy to hit that follow and that subscribe so you can be notified when we drop the next video. As always, love what you do and do what you love. Peace.
All right, cut. That's a wrap. Let's go home, guys.